There are artists who seem to carry an entire nation in their voice. Dmitri Hvorostovsky was one of them. We know him as the silver-haired baritone who conquered every major opera house in the world. But behind the tuxedo and the Verdi roles was something even more personal, a quiet devotion to the songs of his home. The Russian romances, the folk ballads, the war songs that spoke of love, loss, and longing. Today we look at that side of him, the Dmitri who sang not to impress, to remember. And we put aside any controversy of his Russianness, and we focus purely on the music and the eternal soul of the Russian people. Dmitri was born in Krasnoyarsk, Siberia in 1962, a world away from the grand stages that would later define his career. He grew up in a musical household, surrounded by folk melodies and radio broadcasts filled with Russian songs, tunes that carried the DNA of his culture. When he trained formally, he mastered Italian legato and French diction. But he never lost his Russian soul. Those who knew him said that no matter what role he sang, there was always a trace of Siberia in the sound, that dark velvet tone rooted in earth and memory. To understand Dmitri's song recordings, you have to understand what Russian song means. In the West, we often separate art song from folk song. In Russia, they merge. Composers like Glinka, Daromishky, Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff built the romance, on the foundation of folk poetry. These are songs of personal confession. A man writes to a distant beloved. A soldier longs for home. And Dmitri, with his diction, his poise, and that impossible combination of strength and tenderness, became their ideal messenger. In 1998, he recorded Russian folk songs, Kalinka, a vivid collection that showed his playful side and his soulful side. Then came I Met You, My Love in 2002, filled with nostalgic romances from the 19th century. Songs like Ya Povno Chudnya Marovnenie and Ochi Chorne. Apologies for my Russian pronunciation. A year later, Where Are You, My Brothers changed everything. The album, dedicated to the memory of World War II soldiers, became a sensation in Russia. He toured it across the country, often singing before veterans who rose to applaud him through tears. These weren't grand opera audiences. They were ordinary people who heard in his voice the echo of their fathers and grandfathers. What made him unique in this repertoire was not just the beauty of his sound, but his restraint. He never oversang, he trusted the words. He could make a single phrase, wait for me and I'll come back, feel like an oath whispered from the front lines. He shaded the vowels differently in Russian than Italian. Darker, rounder, closer to speech. And his legato, that famous endless stream of tone, carried the weight of poetry more than performance. In these songs, he wasn't acting, he was remembering. His partnership with the pianist Mikhail Arkadiev and later Ivari Ilya brought new intimacy to his recitals. They weren't just accompaniments, they were dialogues, duologues. I remember watching so many of these recitals. Every time he came to London, I was there. In fact, when we first worked together, he remembered me from seeing me in the audience. These songs were also his refuge. As his fame grew, so did the distance between the man and the myth. The Russian songs allowed him to return home emotionally and spiritually. When illness came, he still performed them. Even after his diagnosis, he sang Dark Eyes and The Roads with an almost prophetic calm. Even today, fans argue good-naturedly amongst themselves for the best recording of Cranes or whatever other Russian song they're looking at that time. He knew what he was saying. He was singing about endurance, about love that survives separation. In a way, those final concerts weren't farewells, they were acts of gratitude. Dmitri Hvorostovsky left behind an extraordinary legacy of Russian song recordings. Through him, a global audience discovered that these works were not relics of a vanished empire, but living art, full of humor, courage, and soul. He inspired non-Russian singers such as myself to delve into the repertoire. I performed these songs myself hundreds of times, trying to perfect the language, difficult though it is for non-Russian speakers. He turned popular wartime songs into high art without losing their humanity. He showed that patriotism and poetry can live in the same breath. And for us singers, he set the standard. Sing honestly, sing from memory, and never let beauty replace truth. He carried the torch from other great Russian artists such as Lizitsyn and Magomayev into the modern world. When you listen to him now, you don't just hear a voice, you hear Russia itself, vast, proud, wounded, and still singing. Dmitri Hvorostovsky reminded us that the greatest art is not about perfection, it's about belonging to your music, to your people, to your heart. And that's why his Russian songs will never fade.
Благодарю за то, что ты по земле прошла, за то, что для другого сбудешься. Благодарю тебя, что не со мной была, и еще за то, что не забудешься. За шепот и за крик, за вечность